start with Brittany. Can you tell us what you do at Backstage?
Sure. So I lead our deal flow team. So essentially, we have a channel where we can evaluate and identify really great new opportunities in terms of new investments at Backstage. And it's not just myself. There's a whole team of people doing this, about 7 people now. So we've equipped ourselves to serve a really big need where we're seeing a lot of pipeline from diverse entrepreneurs, and we are able to evaluate all of their applications that come in our application channel. So yeah, that is the team that I'm overseeing.
Awesome. And if you're on the deal flow team, can you raise your hand as well? So if you're a founder here and you want to talk about Backstage investments, those are the people you talk to because they can write checks. And Brittany leads that team. Thank you, Brittany. Lolita, what do you do at Backstage?
Sure. So thank you all for being here, and thanks for having us on the panel. What do I do? I'm actually really excited to be working on the latest headliner Fund 1, which is the $36 million fund focused on investing in Black female founders.
Amazing. And you're our latest addition to the team, like a get of all time. Yeah, because you were in high demand, and I'm so glad that you chose us. That's really great. Thank you. Christie, what do you do?
Yes. Hi, I'm Christie Pitts. I'm Arlan's business partner at Backstage. So what that means is I also make investments at Backstage Capital. And we have another company called Backstage Studio where I'm the co-founder and COO.
Awesome. And I just noticed that Taylor's here. Hey, Taylor. This is Taylor. She's going to be an astronaut, and she's amazing. She spoke yesterday, and she's one of my heroes. So thanks for being here to see this. Yeah, I told you I didn't prep for this, so I have no idea what I'm going to ask y'all, but I'm so curious about everything. So can we talk, maybe it'll be great if you can do quickly, like a little context of where you came from, like what brought you to Backstage because of, where were you at first? So we can start with Christie.
Sure. So we met through Twitter a few years ago, and at the time I was working at a company called Verizon. It's a huge telecom company in the US. I worked there for almost 13 years, and at the time that I met Arlan, my role was on the Verizon Ventures team. So it's the corporate investment group from Verizon, and I managed strategic relationships between our portfolio there and our business development units within the company.
Great. Brittany?
Yeah, so my background, I essentially spent way too much time doing investment banking, almost a full 5 years doing that. Ended up going to business school. I went to Harvard to kind of reevaluate my life in terms of career-wise, and I was inspired to start my own company. And that's when I kind of realized how difficult it was being a Black woman trying to raise venture capital. So I ran my company for a couple of years and ended up transitioning to VC and worked at a couple other funds, intentionally focused on working on funds that were trying to make an impact in terms of increasing their investments towards women and people of color. And then ended up at Backstage after you guys, you told me what you were working on, and I was super excited to join.
Awesome. Lolita?
Sure. So I was in enterprise tech for basically the last decade. So I worked for IBM, for Cisco. So I was total woman in tech. And then what happened is I actually started a project, which I guess some of you may call a startup. It didn't work out, but what did work out is that it was my entree into Silicon Valley and into working with the startup world. And that was my first introduction to what even venture capital was. I didn't know until then. So this was maybe 4 years ago. And since then, I made it one of my goals to, at some point, transition into venture capital. I worked for another startup and then went to business school, and it was there that I really was able to materialize my career shift to venture capital. I was actually in Madrid, here in Europe, so it was very cool. Also early stage fund that I worked for. And then when I came back to the States, I mean, this was just the most perfect opportunity to land a job in, not just because of what the fund is doing, but the team. The team is so incredible, and you would never see a team so diverse, so talented, and so collaborative. But on a personal level, I'm a woman of color. I've been a minority. I have faced a lot of these things that so many of you have heard of, right? Like, where do you belong? Do you belong here? Maybe this isn't for you. Those kind of questions. And so for me, that part aligns so much with what Backstage is doing. But at the same time, the capitalist in me says, hey, here's an opportunity where we can fund really great companies with great leaders. We get to vote for what that future looks like, and then prove that our thesis makes sense, that this is the last arbitrage opportunity for venture capital. And I'm really excited to invest in the right companies, see that growth, see that capital, and have these founders recycle the fund and the energy into an ecosystem that will, for sure, be more diverse than it is today.
Amazing, wow. And Lolita, that reminds me, I want to go a little bit deeper into like even beyond the 4 years and how because we all have a story of like what really kind of brought us here. Do you mind talking a little bit about like your earlier life and like what
Yeah.
framed you?
Yeah, I kind of brushed off a little bit, I guess, in terms of how it begun. So some people like to talk about the startups that started in a garage. My life started in a garage. I grew up in one of the poorest areas in Los Angeles. Maybe some of you have watched the movie Straight Outta Compton. That was definitely the neighborhood I grew up in, so I came from very little. My parents didn't know the language when they illegally immigrated. They're now legal. But, and so it was very difficult. We only spoke Spanish in my household. I learned English through Sesame Street. I think that Europeans also have that. And so I grew up in one of the poorest areas, and where statistics were actually thrown at me. Here's the statistics. You're likely not to finish high school or secondary school, I think that's what they call it here. You're likely to drop out of school and get pregnant and have 2 kids by the age of 15 and be on welfare, which is social programs in the States. And that's what I came up against, and fortunately, I had parents that instilled a lot of great work ethic, as well as the belief that I could be more. I really am so grateful for my parents for telling me every day that I could be anything that I wanted to be. But of course, it was very challenging. And having gone through that, come from such humble beginnings to now have an opportunity to really bring others up, I feel it as an honor as well as a responsibility. Because for all of us sitting in this room, we all have such great privilege. Maybe you think that you don't relative to your circle, but there are those who you can support, whether it's through venture capital or not. But I encourage everyone to expand their circles and to push forward in a sustainable way, right? Let's make sure that we're making money, and it's not just all fluff. It's not just like, you're great, you could do anything. It's, let's put our money where our mouth is.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I mean, like, we have a dream team. I won't say it enough. So Christie, what do you think about like the future, like looking at what we've done, the 100 companies, what does that mean to you, and what do you think about the future of Backstage? And I'll ask Brittany the same.
Yes, so our 100th investment is really important to me personally. When we first met, we talked about, I think there were about maybe 10 investments that you had made at that point. It had been, or maybe 12. And I knew Arlan from social media, but I didn't know Arlan, right? So I was like, what is Arlan about? What is she working on? And she said to me at that time, I'm going to make 100 investments in underestimated founders by 2020. And I said to myself, like, I want to be a part of that. Getting capital into the hands of 100 founders that are building companies means that you can make change across the whole ecosystem. Because when you invest in diverse founders, you recoup those investments in several different ways. There's the return on financial investment for the investors, but you solve so many of the problems that we see, not just in tech, but in society. So for example, there's a big problem with diversity in recruiting. And when you invest in a diverse team at the top, diversity begets diversity. So then they go on to hire more diverse candidates in all areas of the business. Investing in diverse founders, also helps to solve some of the wealth issues that we have in terms of income inequality. Because the people that make the most amount of money when there's an exit are the people with the highest stake on the cap table, which are the founders. And then those people go on to invest in the next set of tech companies. And so by solving this one problem, you can then create this change across an entire ecosystem and then across a society. So I knew then, after that one moment when I first met Arlan, that she was out to change it all, not just to invest in a few companies. And I thought to myself, like, how can I be a part of this? And so we're a little bit ahead of schedule, about a year and a half ahead of schedule. We just made our 100th investment. And now the question is, what's next for Backstage? And my answer is it's what we've already done and then some, because we will not be finished until our 100 companies that we've invested in, until we've helped them succeed. And then also, how can we take what we've learned and turn that into the next level of change that we want to see in the world?
Awesome. And then Brittany, either on a personal level or just a ecosystem level, what do you?
Yeah, so I think I'll address it from almost a pipeline/ecosystem level. So, we invested in 100 companies, and that is phenomenal, and I think that's a huge milestone, but it's really just the beginning. Like, we are scratching the surface, and in terms of leading our deal flow team, as I mentioned, looking at all the new investment opportunities, we have access to thousands of companies that are very high potential founders of color, women, LGBT founders, and that's so exciting that now, they have an opportunity to access funding where they just honestly would not have, and we're shining a light on all of those founders. So I think just understanding Backstage, I think people still have kind of some doubt out there that there might still be a pipeline problem. Are there enough entrepreneurs of underrepresented backgrounds that are starting companies? And I can definitely, if you looked at what we're seeing, we can put that to rest. That is no longer a concern. In fact, we have an opportunity where we're seeing so many companies that we had to build out a team that you see here. So I think being super intentional about investing in underrepresented founders is step one, and we've seen how that has then led to dramatic inbound. Like, if you're now a black woman, you can go somewhere to access, at least you can now talk to a venture capitalist, you can now get your company in front of someone, and that's huge. And then second, we've built out this team. We're building our own community within our portfolio companies, our headliners, with our LPs. Everyone's sending us access to other startups that they're seeing. This network that we've built is now on the ground in different states across the US. It keeps getting bigger and essentially snowballing. And the last thing is that we do have an open application for funding. So I'm seeing entrepreneurs from all over, globally even, and I think the opportunity is just so big, and I'm really excited, and I hope you can see that, because I think I'm seeing just we're at the very beginning of this, and I'm seeing how exciting it is to be at the point where now these founders have a voice and have a place to go, and I didn't see that when I was a founder, so I'm just so excited to be on the other side of that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and that's just a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
Where it's a completely different landscape, and that was, 3 years ago. I can imagine when it was. I can remember when it was just sort of like, where is everybody? We're all an island, and now there's so much going on. And I hope that Backstage had something to do with people feeling welcome. I want to continue that. And I think there's a misconception that we don't invest outside of the U.S. We look at companies from all over because we get people from all over writing. So how much do you see, Brittany, that's outside of the U.S. coming into our open application?
Actually growing, I'd say maybe 5 to 10%.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a lot.
That's Europe, some parts of the Caribbean, it's a couple in Africa. People are applying from all over, especially as they see more of your story being public.
Right.
That has driven a lot of inbound.
And so, here in Ireland, I know there are a lot of founders, if they're women or people of color, LGBT founders in the audience, you can go to backstagecapital.com/apply. The deal flow team looks at everything, right? Considers everything. And I think that's probably where we end it now.